Hello, my name is Jeffrey Nicholas. I'm an associate professor of philosophy at Providence College. This is a fourth lecture in a series of 9 lectures on Aristotle's virtue ethics. As you can see here, I began with a discussion of who Aristotle is and the concept of eudaimonia and virtue. In this fourth lecture, we're going to talk about the types of actions, and particularly the nature of voluntary action. Succeeding lectures will cover incontinence, friendship, contemplation, intellectual virtues, and then assessing Aristotle. So to begin, if we're talking about virtue, then one of the things that Aristotle wants to make clear is that virtue is about voluntary actions. So voluntary actions are the kind of actions that we receive praise and blame for. They're chosen and they're not done from force or ignorance. So for instance, if we praise someone, it's because we think they are responsible for what they have done. And if we blame someone, it's because we also think that they're responsible for what they have done. Obviously, voluntary actions are not limited to members of the species Homo sapiens. We also praise and blame dogs, for instance, and we know that dogs learn from this praise and blame. So they become more responsible for their actions as we train them. So there's a certain amount of choice in what a dog does, but we would want to think that human beings have even more choice, and in fact that human beings can be forced to do something or can do something from ignorance, which we know is not true in the case of dogs, for instance, for the most part. So when we say that someone does something from force, obviously if they're doing it from force, if someone takes my hand and is stronger than me and makes me slap someone else, then that's an action that's done by force. It's not voluntary. So I am not praised or blamed for slapping the other person. Or if I'm ignorant of something, if I don't know that there is a man standing behind me, hiding behind my car, then if I back into him and hit him, then I am not responsible. I receive neither praise or blame for that kind of action. We want to contrast voluntary actions with involuntary actions. So involuntary actions are the kinds of actions that receive pardon and for which we pity other people. An involuntary action would be an action that is uh, against our choice, or what we might today call our will, though Aristotle does not use that kind of terminology. So an involuntary action, we pardon someone for that. So if someone takes my hand and they are stronger than me, Vin Diesel grabs my hand and he makes me slap someone else, then I might receive pardon for that, or I might receive pity for being next to Vin Diesel when he wants to use my hand against my choice. So here the force is an external origin. It's something that's outside of me. So Vin Diesel is someone who is outside of me. He grabs my hand and he uses it to hit another person. So we're not talking in Aristotle's sense about an emotion. Emotions would be internal. They have an internal origin. And part of Aristotle's theory of virtue, of course, is that we are, in some sense, responsible for training our emotions, or at least training our responses to our emotions. And so if we go back to the previous lecture and talk about virtue as a mean between an excess and a deficiency, we looked at how this virtue is about a particular kind of emotion when we're talking about virtues of character. And so we're responsible for how we react to our emotions. If I am fearful, I can still act rashly or I can act in a deficient manner. And so the virtuous person is someone who is able to direct his emotions or her emotions into the right action. So again, voluntary actions are actions where there is no force involved, and involuntary actions is where the force is involved has an external origin. This is quite different from the way that we often think about it today, because we say people are not responsible for their emotions, and we sometimes pardon people for acting on their emotions. For Aristotle, that might seem a little bit strange because we're not training people to act virtuously. And again, the importance of virtue for Aristotle is to achieve our ultimate eudaimonia, our self-realization. And so we can go back to our initial discussions about what's necessary for that self-realization, for achieving that eudaimonia, and we know that emotions can get into the way sometimes. So Aristotle is saying, look, let's take care of our emotions and recognize that that doesn't make our actions involuntary, but that in fact our actions have to be responsive to how we act in relationship to our emotions. So when we're talking about an involuntary action, we're talking about force, and the force is unconditional, its cause is external, and the agent contributes nothing. So if Vin Diesel grabs my hand and causes me to slap someone, then I have to contribute nothing. So if I allow Vin Diesel, not only allow Vin Diesel, but actually work with Vin Diesel to make my slap even more efficient, then I have contributed something. I have not engaged in an involuntary action, but into a voluntary action. So here, duress is something different than an involuntary action because duress is not force. So here's a situation where someone has kidnapped someone we love, and they say either rob the bank or we're going to kill this person that we love. In that case, we're not being forced in Aristotle's sense. We are under an extreme condition of duress. We want to save the person we love, and we feel that duress, we feel like we're being forced, but in fact, we're not being forced. The action comes from within the agent. So if I indeed agree to go rob the bank to save the loved one, then the action, robbing the bank, doing the sorts of things that are necessary to rob the bank, they come from within me. They are part of my choice. So in this case, Aristotle is saying we're still making a choice, and the choice is for some good. In this case, I'm not choosing to rob the bank but I'm choosing to rob the bank in order to save my loved one. So if you go back to my second lecture on what the good is, and you'll recognize there again that there's a hierarchy of good. And so if I could save my loved one by doing something else other than robbing a bank, something that was more virtuous, I would probably do that instead. Uh, so, in Aristotle's sense, an action that arises from duress is a mixed action. There is an influence from outside of me, but there's also action that comes from within me. So sometimes we might praise these actions, sometimes we might pardon the actions. So if I were caught by the police and everything was proven that my loved ones were in jeopardy, I might be pardoned for robbing the bank, even though I did it from my own free will. Um, Without the condition of duress, if I was doing the action and it wasn't because someone was kidnapped and they were being threatened, or because I wanted to do it myself, then Aristotle would say this would be the definition of an involuntary action, as if someone had taken over my mind and forced me to rob the bank. And in that case, the force comes from outside. So again, we want to make a distinction between involuntary actions, which involves a force from outside, and an action that's done under duress, which involves some outside influence, but the action originates within the agent, the person performing the act. Now, we also want to recognize, aside from voluntary actions and involuntary actions, non-voluntary actions. So these are actions in which the category of voluntary doesn't really apply. It's not voluntary and it's not involuntary, it is non-voluntary. These kinds of actions, for Aristotle, arise from ignorance. And so this would be a situation in which, as I said before, say someone is hiding behind my car and I don't know this. I've gotten into my car, I've checked my rear view mirror, I've checked my side mirrors, I don't have the radio on, I can hear anything, and this person makes no noise, and I put my car in reverse, and I back up, and I hit this person. I'm ignorant that the person is behind me. I've done all the reasonable things that a person should do in terms of checking whether there's someone behind the car, whether he's going to hit someone when he's driving. And in this case, I do hit someone, but it's a non-voluntary action. And we see that it's non-voluntary because first off, I am ignorant of what's going on, so it can't be from my own choice. And second off, I feel pain that this person was behind me and I hit them. I don't know why they were behind me. Maybe they were playing hide and seek or whatever reason it is. They were behind my car. I feel really bad that I hit this person. Now, there's a difference, of course, between ignorance that I have no responsibility for and ignorance that I am responsible for. So if we change the situation and I come out of the bar and I'm just drunk and I can't see anything, and there's someone behind the car and I'm just too drunk to see them, and then I back up, even though I don't see that person and technically am ignorant, I am responsible for the state of ignorance here. So I have not done everything that I should have done in order to check. In fact, what I've done is I've made myself incapacitated so that I cannot make voluntary choices at this time. I've taken my ability to make choices away from me. So Aristotle would hold a person responsible who was drunk and backed up and hit someone. Well, that's not a non-voluntary action, that is a voluntary action. So in a non-voluntary action, ignorance is of the particulars, not of the universal. And what he means here is, of course, I know that it's not good to hit someone in the car when you're backing up. So I know the universal, don't hit people with a car, but I'm ignorant of the particular, oh, there's someone hiding behind my car. Uh, we're all responsible for knowing what the good is, and part of learning the virtues is learning about what the good is. And we are also responsible for knowing the particulars. We're responsible for knowing who's behind the car, whether they are behind the car, so that's the where, and what happens and when it happens. So we are responsible for educating ourselves. But if we've done everything that we can to educate ourselves and we still remain ignorant, then we are within a situation of non-voluntary action. So this leads then to an understanding of what decision is here. We've talking about voluntary action, and that relies on making choices. Well, choice comes from a certain kind of decision, right? Decision is what's proper to a virtue. And so here we're talking about something that is a subclass of the voluntary action. And what decision is, it's an action or it's a thought process that comes from deliberation, not from feeling, not from wishing, not from appetite, in which we decide to do something. So I get into the car and I decide to drive to work. Here I've deliberated about what I wanted to do. The best way to get to work is to drive there today. There's snow on the ground. There's no way for me to walk. And I've looked at the other options. So it's not that I feel like I want to drive. In fact, I might feel like I want to walk, but no one cleans their snow in Providence. Go figure. Or I might wish to just teleport to work sometimes. Or I might have a desire to do something that involves driving. But what I've done is I've taken a chance to look at the different options and I've come to a decision. So, decision requires deliberations. Deliberation is about our actions and actions that we have some kind of control over. So, I don't have really the capacity to deliberate about whether I breathe or about whether my heart beats. I can, of course, hold my breath for a certain amount of time, but as we know, if we hold it too long, we simply collapse and then our body takes over and we start breathing again. Also, I might be able I might want to stop someone from using a nuclear weapon, but I am just not in the area where I can influence that action. And so I can't really deliberate about that. That would be more the area of wish. So deliberation is about actions that we can control and that we can do. It is not about all human affairs. It's about the things that we are responsible for. And it's an action in which we can bring about differing results. Okay, we deliberate about many kinds of things, and what's most important is when we can change the results of what happens. So deliberation is about action, not ends, Aristotle says. So we think about what the action is. The end is already set for us because we're choosing to act for the good. And deliberation is indefinite because we have choices before us. A decision is definite. and that leads to character. What kind of actions lead us to be the